Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Dragon Prince Yuan Season 3 Episode number 4 based on novel. So let's start. Green wind blades seemed to form a sea as they engulfed every corner of the golden stone platform. The innumerable vibrating wind blades flickered with an icy light, a sight that made one's heart shiver inside. In a brief moment, Lu Feng had displayed an impressive tactic, showing that his title as the number one amongst the 10 great outer mountain disciples was not just for show. Gazes that could fill the sky converged on the spot where Zhu Yuan had been in the sea of wind blades, as everyone wiped sweat off their foreheads. Kill. A chilling light glowed in Lu Feng's eyes. Without any hesitation, his hand closed as a sky full of wind blades shuddered. With a howl, all of them shot towards Zhu Yuan's location. No matter how fast you are, you can't escape from the range of my wind blade sea. Zhu Yuan also seemed to understand that he would not be able to avoid this. Hence, his body did not move from the stop, merely concentrating on the wind blades that were zooming towards him. Every wind blade contained deadly Genesis Chi. Let's not mention the third layer Alpha Origin, even an ordinary fourth layer Alpha Origin would be pierced full of holes. As the one who was trapped deep inside this sea of wind blades, Zhu Yuan's situation was far from reassuring. Under the attention of countless gazes, the sea of green wind blades arrived at their destination, drowning Zhu Yuan's figure in a few brief moments. A piercing noise stealthily sounded as the golden ground riddled full of holes. A sea of wind blades swept forth, tirelessly unleashing a torrent of attacks. It was a long while later before the sea of wind blades finally stopped their assault. Every single gaze in the area immediately looked over, only to see Zhu Yuan's figure standing on the exact same spot. A cold smile was revealed on Lu Feng's face. To forcibly endure his attack, let alone a first-layer Alpha Origin like Zhu Yuan, even a fourth-layer Alpha Origin expert would be gravely injured. However, just as the smile on his face was widening, it suddenly froze slightly when his gaze looked to the front. Zhu Yuan stood there, his etherealized body covered in purplish gold scales that protected him. On the purplish gold scale armor flickered complicated glowing runes that gave off a peculiar power. It was the power of Genesis runes. The purplish gold scale armor was covered in cut marks, and even broken in some places. But as a whole, the sea of wind blades had failed to break through his layers of defenses. An uproar began to spread in the area. No one had expected Zhu Yuan to so easily withstand the attack that was powerful enough to seriously injure a fourth layer Alpha Origin. On the Genesis Chi clouds, Sect Master Qingyang nodded and said, "Not bad, that should be the ethereal form technique." Reaching this level in a short 3 months really shows his talent. The Hongya Peak Master Jiyu Qianhong's voice was akin to a clap of thunder. Those purplish gold scales seem to be a little similar to the external tempering style. This kid is suited to walk the path of external tempering. The miserably looking white brow elder from the Spirit Rune Peak shook his head and said, although the purplish gold scales have decent defensive capabilities, the main reason why the kid was able to block Lu Feng's Wind Sea technique was the grade 4 defensive Genesis rune he had drawn on the scales. That's why I feel that Genesis rune cultivation is stronger than external tempering techniques. The latter will easily result in the body growing too powerful, making one become stupid. Jiyu Qianhong's widened in a glare as he angrily said, "Old White, no matter how much bullshit you spout, Genesis rune cultivation will still be a path one takes when every other option has been exhausted. How can it possibly compare to external tempering?" The white brow elder shook his head and sighed. Like playing the lute to a cow, simpleton. The Snow Lotus Peak Master Liu Lianyi looked towards Ling Jun and said, "It seems that it will not be so easy for Lu Feng to become champion." The Sword Cometh Peak Master Ling Jun merely displayed a kindly smile as he replied, "You are mistaken, Peak Master Liu. Lu Feng had merely been probing his opponent earlier. If Zhu Yuan was unable to even deal with such attacks, he would really be a little too weak. Lu Feng has held the initiative from start to end. The fact that Zhu Yuan is able to last so long with his first layer Alpha Origin strength is already very impressive, but it will be very difficult for him to stop Lu Feng." Liu Lianyin smiled faintly and said, "We shall watch and see." Beside Ling Jun, Lu Xianyin did not dare to interject into the conversation between the two peak masters. However, her little red mouth curled slightly. In her opinion, Lu Feng was sure to win this battle, and Zhu Yuan's resistance was ultimately akin to a mantis trying to block a cart. On the golden stone platform, Lu Feng's expression darkened slightly as he gazed at Zhu Yuan, who had managed to withstand his wind blades. The former's eyes grew even colder as he nonchalantly said, Zhu Yuan, you do have some ability. He had originally believed Zhu Yuan would be injured by his technique, but it looks like he had miscalculated. Evidently, he had still underestimated Zhu Yuan's strength. Although the latter was only at the first layer alpha origin, he had numerous tricks up his sleeve, making it hard for anyone to pin down. The purplish gold scales on Zhu Yuan's body gleamed. He did not intend to reply, as a similarly icy light flashed in his eyes. His foot slammed into the ground, and his etherealized body disappeared from the spot. A split second later, he appeared in front of Lu Feng, a fist covered in purplish gold scales blasting towards the latter along with volatile Genesis Chi. He had begun his counter-attack. Oh? Finally dare to face me directly. Mockery rose from the corners of Lu Feng's mouth when he saw this. He did not back down, a fist also flying forward as Genesis Chi tore through the air. The two exchanged dozens of blows in an instant, each attack ruthlessly aimed at the other's fatal spots. Although Zhu Yuan's attacks were ferocious, all of them were blocked by Lu Feng. The advantage of being a fourth-layer alpha origin meant that his Genesis Chi was much stronger than Zhu Yuan's. Lu Feng mocked through the lightning-quick exchange of blows. Is this all your attacks amount to? He swung his palm as he sneered, squarely hitting Zhu Yuan's fist shadow. The Genesis Chi in Lu Feng's body flooded out, slapping Zhu Yuan's fist shadow away. However, the moment Zhu Yuan's fist shadow was scattered, his right hand came swinging through, an alarming amount of Genesis Chi suddenly converging towards the center of his palm. The Genesis Chi transformed into a glowing Genesis Chi ball swirling with wind and lightning, berserk undulations violently pulsing outwards. Great wind and thunder. A deep voice echoed in Zhu Yuan's heart. Lu Feng's pupils violently shrank. Zhu Yuan's true attack had been hidden under his numerous fist shadows, the earlier attacks merely a distraction. The wind and lightning ball rapidly enlarged in Lu Feng's eyes. However, Lu Feng was no ordinary individual after all. At this perilous moment, he suddenly sucked in a deep breath as his cheeks rapidly ballooned, before blowing out a stream of green chi. Green light source needle. The green chi transformed into a thin shadow that shot forth at an alarming speed. In a flash, it smashed into the wind and lightning ball. Bang! A violent shockwave unfurled, sweeping Zhu Yuan and Lu Feng away. Their feet smeared across the ground, leaving behind long skid marks, while they stabilized their bodies. Lu Feng's expression had grown even uglier. He had nearly been caught in Zhu Yuan's sneaky attack earlier, forcing him to reveal one of his hidden trump cards. One should know that the green light source needle was a little heaven Genesis technique. It was made from condensed Genesis Chi, and possessed astonishing power. If used at the right moment, it could even bring about a reversal. However, it needed to be refined in advance, and had now been forced out by Zhu Yuan. Zhu Yuan frowned slightly, not because he had failed to injure Lu Feng, but because the latter was still hiding such a card up his sleeve. The green shadow from before was way too quick, and Zhu Yuan would likely be struck if he was not guarding against it. Fortunately, he was now prepared for it. Lu Feng's icy gaze looked towards Zhu Yuan as he suddenly shook his head and said, "It seems that I have underestimated you. As such, don't blame me for bullying you because of your weak and poor background." Zhu Yuan's brows knitted together as vigilance appeared in his eyes. Lu Feng let out an icy chuckle. With a deep breath, his hands abruptly began to form a series of seals. Green light immediately dashed into the sky from the top of his head, the earth-shaking cry of a sword ringing from within. Just like an eagle's cry. Countless gazes converged towards the spot, and saw a long green sword within the green light. Piercing rays of light exploded from the sword as an astonishing aura unfurled. The eyes of innumerable disciples abruptly widened at this moment, as cries of shock and horror began to sound one after another. That is, a heaven Genesis weapon. Green light whizzed out from the top of Lu Feng's head. Inside the light, a green sword released a loud and clear sword cry. A formidable pressure spread from the sword. Countless gazes looked over in horror and shock, seeing the ancient patterns that had been carved onto the sword. Green light swirled around it, giving off an aura of mystery. The handle of the sword was covered in green feathers, making it appear similar to a soaring green eagle. This green eagle sword had clearly surpassed the black tier. On the Genesis Chi clouds above, Sect Master Qingyang gazed at the green eagle sword and said, "I've heard that the Lu clan has a treasure called the Green Eagle Sword. It's a mid-grade heaven tier Genesis weapon, that was made from the beak and feathers of a grade 6 Genesis beast, the green god eagle. Although the sword Lu Feng has summoned seems similar, it does not give off the same sharpness, and is likely an imitation. Even so, it has reached the quasi-heaven Genesis weapon level, a mighty power to any Alpha Origin practitioner. Liu Lianin frowned slightly and said, "It's rather unfair to rely on an external item to achieve victory." Peak Master Ling Jun chuckled and responded, "There is no rule that bans the usage of Genesis weapons in the peak selection ceremony. After all, obtaining a Genesis weapon is part of one's luck, which is also a kind of strength." Lu Feng would join the Sword Cometh Peak after the ceremony. Hence, Peak Master Ling Jun was more than happy to see him become champion. In fact, the former may even become guide of sorts that will draw even more disciples to the Sword Cometh Peak, allowing it to grow stronger. Liu Lianyi swept an indifferent glance at the former, but did not say anything. After all, using a Genesis weapon was indeed within the rules. She looked towards Zhu Yuan's figure and secretly said in her heart, "This kid had better not lose so easily." She did not like Ling Jun. Although it was impossible for her to do much since they were part of the same sect, disrupting his plans a little would make her feel a little better. As the countless gazes in the area converged onto the golden stone platform, Zhu Yuan frowned slightly as he gazed at the sword within the green light. The power that pulsed from it made his heart shiver a little in fear. However, he could sense that it had yet to truly reach the Heaven Genesis weapon level. A Genesis weapon at that level would be able to draw in and direct the surrounding Genesis chi, giving it enormous power. Lu Feng's sword was evidently still somewhat lacking. Even so, it had indeed surpassed the black tier, hence why it was ranked in between the black and heaven tier. "How troublesome," muttered Zhu Yuan. Lu Feng already had the strength of the fourth layer Alpha Origin, and wielded powerful and abundant Genesis chi. The addition of the green eagle sword was akin to giving wings to a tiger, making it very difficult for him to find a worthy opponent amongst the fourth layer Alpha Origin. While Zhu Yuan was observing, Lu Feng's icy gaze shot over as he indifferently said, "Don't blame me for bullying you. I'm from the prestigious Lu clan, and will naturally have better resources than you. This is my advantage, an advantage I would never intentionally give up, because that would only be too foolish." His tone was filled with pride. After all, there were times when being born in a powerful clan was also part of one's luck and strength. Without waiting for Zhu Yuan to respond, Lu Feng made a sword seal and shouted, "Ha!" The green eagle sword released a clear eagle cry as 1,000 rays of green light exploded, filling the air with deadly sword chi. With a jolt, the sword transformed into a streak of green. It pierced through space at extreme speed, shooting straight towards Zhu Yuan. Zhu Yuan's body instantly etherealized as he rapidly withdrew. "No matter how fast you are, you'll never match the speed of my sword." Lu Feng merely sneered. The streak of green shuddered, and bizarrely appeared in front of Zhu Yuan. A flash of sword light swept forth, heading straight for the fatal spots on Zhu Yuan's body. Before the deadly sword chi arrived, the purplish gold scales had already begun to crack. This told Zhu Yuan that even the magical python scales would not protect him if he was stabbed by the green eagle sword. The might of a quasi-heaven Genesis weapon was not something the body of someone who had never practiced any external tempering techniques should clash against. Sword light rapidly enlarged in his pupils. At this moment, Zhu Yuan suddenly made a grabbing motion as the heavenly Yuan brush grew in his hand. Its snow-white hairs darted forward like a white snake, wrapping around the green sword light. However, the green sword light was too powerful, scattering the snow-white hairs in a flash. Zhu Yuan's body continued to back away, as Genesis chi surged towards the heavenly Yuan brush. Countless snow-white hairs transformed into obstruction, after obstruction, that was flung towards the green sword light one after another. However, the green sword light continued to press forward, destroying any obstacle in its path. The heavenly Yuan brush was steadily being beaten back. At the end of the day, the heavenly Yuan brush had only awakened its third rune, and was only a mid-grade black Genesis weapon. It may have once been a sacred Genesis weapon, but it was currently akin to a ferocious tiger in deep sleep. Meanwhile, Zhu Yuan's figure continuously retreated. Lu Feng stood in the air with his arms across his chest, a toying look in his eyes as he watched Zhu Yuan being pushed back step by step. The Genesis chi in the former's body streamed endlessly into the green eagle sword, allowing it to maintain its assault. Zhu Yuan may have been able to tango with Lu Feng earlier, but that was only through the speed of the ethereal form and the former's powerful defenses. But now, the green eagle sword was faster than Zhu Yuan, and possessed enough destructive power to penetrate his defenses. Hence, Zhu Yuan was now being completely suppressed. Gazes that could fill the sky watched the battle on the golden stone platform. Numerous disciples sighed inside at this scene. As expected, Lu Feng was still the more formidable individual. As someone who was born in the Lu clan, his resources and foundations were far from what any ordinary disciple could match. A quasi-heaven genesis weapon was not something an ordinary disciple would possess. At a location extremely close to the golden stone platform, Jiyu Hongi and Yang Xiu faced each other. They had not fought, because Yang Xiu did not plan on becoming Jiyu Hongi's enemy. Instead, they were watching the battle between Zhu Yuan and Lu Feng. As they watched, Yang Xiu chuckled at Jiyu Hongi and said, "See, even if you did stop me, he is still not Lu Feng's match. His defeat will happen sooner or later." Jiyu Hongi swept an icy glance at the former, but did not reply. However, she sighed regretfully in her heart. Zhu Yuan's current situation did not look good at all. Under the numerous watching eyes, Zhu Yuan continued to be pushed back on the golden stone platform, gradually approaching its edge. However, his gaze had begun to flicker faintly as he continued to retreat. There was a peculiar look in his eyes as he looked towards the heavenly Yuan brush in his hands. While being suppressed by the green eagle sword, he could faintly sense a tiny sliver of anger begin stirring within it. As if the dignity of a king was being challenged. Rage was slowly brewing in the heavenly Yuan brush. The brush had once been a sacred genesis weapon, and although its grade had now fallen, a king was still ultimately a king. Therefore, the continuous suppression by a mere quasi-heaven genesis weapon had now angered the fragment of a spirit that was left inside it. A king may fall, but that did not mean it may be bullied. Zhu Yuan's glowing gaze stared at the mottled body of the brush, where a faint light was gradually emerging in the long slumbering fourth rune under the intense clash. For a long time, Zhu Yuan had continued to feed the heavenly Yuan brush with beast spirits every day. However, the fourth rune had ultimately showed no signs of awakening, a fact that had really weighed down on Zhu Yuan's heart. He never imagined that the long silent fourth rune would voluntarily begin to awaken under the continuous assault of the green eagle sword. The dignity of the brush, that was once a sacred genesis weapon, made it incapable of tolerating a quasi-heaven genesis weapon stepping on its head. The corners of Zhu Yuan's lips slowly raised at an angle. He had not expected the green eagle sword's suppression to bring about such an outcome. This would save him a lot of effort. The dim fourth rune on the brush's mottled body grew brighter and brighter. It was at this moment that Lu Feng suddenly frowned, faintly feeling that something was wrong. He could sense that the originally scattered and beaten snow-white hairs seemed to be gradually growing more and more concentrated, causing the power of the sword light to drop. "I cannot delay any further. I'll slash him off the stage." Lu Feng's eyes hardened as he changed his sword seal. The green eagle sword released an explosive sword cry in response, green light bursting forth as the sword seemed to breath. The light rapidly expanded to 100 feet and chopped downwards, tearing open a crack in space. Numerous gasps and cries sounded across the area. Everyone clearly understood that Lu Feng had lost his patience, and was now going to end the battle with this strike. Even amongst the fourth layer Alpha Origin, there was likely no one capable of blocking this attack. Jiyu Hongi's expression changed slightly, worry flashing in her eyes, as she tightly clenched her fists. The green sword light rapidly descended. Just as it was about to hit, Zhu Yuan suddenly raised his head, seemingly endless light surging within his eyes. He grasped the heavenly Yuan brush with both hands and shook it as the snow-white hairs converged into a flower bud-like spear tip that spouted a sharp light. Expressionless, he powerfully swung the heavenly Yuan brush overhead, as if it was a 1,000-ton hammer. Courting death. Lu Feng coldly snorted when he saw this. "Watch how my sword will chop apart that lousy brush of yours." Countless gazes gathered on the golden stone platform, as the dazzling green sword light abruptly fell, smashing into the vertically swung heavenly Yuan brush. A resonant sound of clashing metal echoed across the area. The moment the loud sound emerged, however, Lu Feng's pupils violently shrank as horror appeared on his face. He had seen the green eagle sword shudder at the moment of impact, as it released a pained wail. The sword light was scattered as the sword was blasted away by the black brush. It was as if the swing of Zhu Yuan's brush was accompanied by an endless torrent of power terrifying and domineering to the max. In fact, even the faint cry of a whale could be heard. "How can this be?" Countless cries of disbelief rang out across the area. Even Sect Master Qing Yang and the rest of the hegemons softly cried out in surprise. Under countless shocked gazes, Zhu Yuan spat out a long drawn-out breath, his gaze burning with excitement as his hand slowly ran across the mottled body of the brush. As his palm passed by, an ancient Genesis rune began to glow with a mysterious light. The fourth rune of the heavenly Yuan brush, Million Whale. The green eagle sword was sent flying, its originally unmatched sword light now scattered. Lu Feng hastily circulated his Genesis Qi, stabilizing the green eagle sword. He looked over, only to find a glaring scratch on the sword. It was also trembling faintly, as if having sustained an injury. Lu Feng's complexion turned ashen, disbelief filling his eyes. The green eagle sword was just moments ago thoroughly suppressing Zhu Yuan. Why had the situation suddenly been reverse? The strange black brush in Zhu Yuan's hands was clearly only a mid-grade black Genesis weapon. How had it scattered the sword light of his green eagle sword? On the Genesis Qi clouds above, Set Master Qing Yang and the rest of the hegemons looked down with a sliver of shock in their gazes. All of them were focused on the heavenly Yuan brush in Zhu Yuan's hands. Hee, how interesting. The black brush in this little one's hands seems to be extraordinary too. Sect Master Qing Yang chuckled in surprise. The black brush was only a mid-grade black Genesis weapon earlier, but it seems to have evolved, leaping across the upper grade to reach the quasi-heaven Genesis weapon level. The white-brow elder's tone was filled with interest as he continued to vocalize his findings. The brush seems to also function as a Genesis rune brush. How amazing. It seems that this kid is also blessed by luck. Jiyu Qianhong nodded. Snow Lotus Peak Master Liu Lianyi's red lips curved slightly, smiling as she gazed at Zhu Yuan's figure. This little one is not bad. I'm beginning to like him more and more. As she spoke, she swept a glance at Ling Jun. Ling Jun softly chuckled, but did not respond. His gaze merely paused on Zhu Yuan for a brief moment. Beside him, Lu Xianyan clenched her teeth, as she hatefully glared at Zhu Yuan. This fellow was really akin to mud, so difficult to get rid of once you touched it. Under the countless gazes of shock from all around, Zhu Yuan's expression was rather calm, though a burning fire had appeared in his eyes as he stared at the heavenly Yuan brush. The Million Whale rune her. Mumbled Zhu Yuan to himself. When the fourth ancient rune awakened, he had gained knowledge of its powers. If the previous three runes were said to bestow numerous variations and transformations to the brush, then the fourth rune could be said to bring raw, astonishing power. Million Whale referred to the ancient dragon whale that was said to possess limitless power. The power of a single ancient dragon whale could flip mountains and overturn the sea, hence, its title as the Million Whale, which was also testament to its terrifying might. It was said that if one had sufficient Genesis Qi, activating this rune would bestow the power of a million whale. A single swing of the brush would destroy anything in its path. Amazing. Zhu Yuan laughed. After awakening the fourth rune, the heavenly Yuan brush had leapt across the high grade, directly reaching the quasi-heaven tier. He could feel that the power contained within it had multiplied several-fold, causing a heart-palpitating pressure to spread. Zhu Yuan gripped the black brush and thrust, creating a series of after-images. He raised his head and looked towards the ugly expression on Lu Feng's face and said, "It seems that your so-called background and resources is not actually better than my own." Lu Feng could not help but laugh in anger when he heard this, and icily said, "Zhu Yuan, you'd better not celebrate too early." His hands came together as vigorous Genesis Qi dashed into the sky, merging with the green eagle sword that had been sent flying. The sword immediately shook, as resplendent sword light exploded once more. "I don't believe that I cannot chop apart your lousy brush." With a howl from Lu Feng, green light exploded from the green eagle sword. A giant eagle seemed to emerge within the green light, releasing a long cry as an alarmingly savage aura swept forth. "Go!" yelled Lu Feng with a dark expression. The giant green eagle-like figure opened its beak, swallowing the green eagle sword, before transforming into a flash of green that dived down towards Zhu Yuan. Ferociously imposing. Destructive sword Qi rippled endlessly from the green eagle's body, as if intending to sunder the land. Lu Feng had roused the remnant green god eagle spirit inside the green eagle sword, and its presence caused the expressions of numerous disciples to change. The green eagle dived downwards in a threatening and ferocious manner. However, Zhu Yuan merely let out an icy snort. Now that the heavenly Yuan brush had evolved again, and had also reached the quasi-heaven tier, the other party's advantage no longer existed. I'll use you to test the heavenly Yuan brush smite. A sharp glint flashed in Zhu Yuan's eyes. Without any hesitation whatsoever, he wrapped both hands around the heavenly Yuan brush as the Genesis chi in his body began to rush out, flooding into the brush. Rumble. Golden light erupted from the brush, filling the sky as it took the shape of a gargantuan ancient dragon whale. As it swam in the sky, it seemed to pulse with boundless power. Zhu Yuan took in a deep breath before the heavenly Yuan brush was ferociously swung. The dragon whale howled, merging with the heavenly Yuan brush as they boldly advanced. In the end, they crashed into the giant green eagle under countless shocked gazes. Boom. At the moment of impact, an extremely berserk Genesis chi shockwave violently swept outwards. Every gaze was tightly glued to the epicenter of the clash, where they saw the green eagle release a piercing shriek as an endless torrent of sword chi rained down on the dragon whale. However, none of this mattered to the latter as it continued to charge forward with terrifying power, smashing directly into the giant green eagle. A loud clang rang out. A wail immediately burst from the giant green eagle, its enormous body blown to bits by the charge of the dragon whale. As the green light began to dim, the green eagle's sword was flung backwards, crack after crack appearing on its blade. Lu Feng paled and vomited a mouthful of blood, evidently also affected. Gasp after gasp sounded in succession. No one had expected that Lu Feng would be the first to be injured in the clash between these two. Jiyu Hongyi breathed a sigh of relief as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders, coldly smiling as she looked at Yang Xiu and said, "It seems that who becomes the champion is still up in the air." Yang Xiu frowned as he replied, "Zhu Yuan is indeed very capable." He paused for a moment before he continued, "However, he has now fully angered Lu Feng. Hongyi, you should know that Lu Feng will not lose so easily." Roar. The moment the final word left his mouth, a furious roar suddenly thundered from the golden stone platform. A surge of alarming Genesis chi undulations swept out from Lu Feng's body. His originally handsome face had turned extremely dark and stormy, intense rage boiling between his brows. Zhu Yuan's counter-attack had thoroughly humiliated him. Zhu Yuan. With an eerily chilling shout, he suddenly bit the top of his tongue and spat out a mouthful of essence blood on the green eagle sword. Bloody light blossomed from the sword as it ferociously shot forth, unleashing a rain of attacks on the heavenly Yuan brush to keep it occupied. At the same time, a scarlet glow surfaced in Lu Feng's eyes as his body moved, appearing in the sky above Zhu Yuan. His hands rapidly formed a series of seals as dark green Genesis chi began to flood the area behind him. Star scripture, triple comet. Vigorous Genesis chi frantically gathered, turning into 300 feet wide green comets above him. The comets began to fall with frightening velocity, heading straight towards Zhu Yuan. It's the star scripture. That's a high-grade Little Heaven Genesis technique, and is one of the strongest in the Outer Mountains. So that's the technique Lu Feng selected in the Hidden Scriptures house. Numerous cries of shock were heard. Many disciples could not help but sigh as they shook their heads. Who could have imagined that the battle between these two individuals would reach such levels? Even some of the more normal Inner Mountain disciples would be unable to achieve this, right? However, would Zhu Yuan be able to stop the now enraged Lu Feng? Under the attention of innumerable gazes, Zhu Yuan gazed at the 3 green comets falling from the sky as he felt the astonishing undulations contained within them. Inhale *. Zhu Yuan took in a deep breath as his hands rapidly formed a series of seals before slamming his foot into the ground a second later. The Genesis chi in his body erupted with a rumble. 300 feet tall pillars of Genesis chi dashed into the sky from the top of his head. Savage violence pulsed from the 3 pillars, and at closer inspection, one would discover the glowing silhouettes of 3 ferocious Genesis beasts within the pillars. The moment the 3 Genesis chi pillars emerged, the 3 Genesis beasts inside them hissed and roared, faintly resembling a dragon roar as a cruel and savage aura spread across the area. The eyes of countless disciples widened, evidently recognizing the technique. The technique Zhu Yuan had used was also one of the high-grade Little Heaven Genesis techniques of the Outer Mountains Hidden Scriptures house, the 9 Dragons Canon. Under the many shocked gazes, 3 boundless Genesis beasts like torrents of Genesis chi shuddered as they smashed into the 3 green comets falling from the sky. For an instant, the world around them seemed to shake. 300 feet tall pillars of Genesis chi dashed into the sky as a savage and cruel aura unfurled. One would faintly see the Genesis chi pillars take on the shape of Genesis beasts. The three beasts were the three dragon-type Genesis beast essence blood Zhu Yuan had refined. They had now fused with Zhu Yuan's Genesis Qi, greatly amplifying its power and giving it ferocious and domineering characteristics when used. Lu Feng's eyes widened slightly when he saw the three Genesis Qi beasts that were charging into the sky. Soon after, he let out an icy chuckle. Only 100 feet. It seems that being denied grade 5 essence blood has affected you substantially. He was naturally aware that Zhu Yuan was practicing the 9 dragons canon. However, the power of this technique was dependent on the quality of the essence blood. Back then, Lu Feng had bought out the 3 bottles of grade 5 Genesis beast essence blood in advance, making Zhu Yuan have no choice but to choose the grade 4 essence blood. As such, the power of Zhu Yuan's 9 dragons canon was naturally unable to reach its peak. Let me destroy your 9 dragons canon with my star scripture. An ominous light flitted across Lu Feng's eyes. Both of them were using high-grade Little Heaven tier Genesis techniques, and he had smoothly mastered his, while Zhu Yuan's 3 Genesis Qi beasts were surely lacking, because he was unable to obtain to most suitable essence blood. If they clashed, Lu Feng knew that he would have the upper hand, hence his expression showed not even the tiniest trace of fear. Lu Feng's seals changed as the 3 green comets began to tremble violently, their dreadful power shaking even the sky itself, making the expressions of numerous disciples turn grave. Under the attention of countless gazes, the 3 beasts released a torrential flood of ferocity, baring their fangs and claws as they tore through the air. Each one of the 3 Genesis Qi beasts was stronger than Zhu Yuan's Great Wind and Thunder technique. With all 3 lined up, even a 4th layer Alpha Origin would have no option but to retreat. Zhu Yuan had likewise sensed that Lu Feng had no thoughts of backing down. The former's gaze flickered slightly. It seems that the other party was very confident. It only took a moment for Zhu Yuan to understand the origin of his opponent's confidence, causing an icy smile to rise from the corners of his mouth. There was nothing to say at this point. Their battle had already reached the peak, and there was no longer any point in holding back. Zhu Yuan raised his hand, and the 3 beasts smashed into the 3 falling green comets. The world around them seemed to shudder violently at this moment. Destroy them. An icy glow was revealed in Lu Feng's eyes. Terrifying power pulsed from the 3 green comets, a force so great that it could level every mountain in a 1,000-mile radius. Rumble. The green comets admittedly contained dreadful destructive power. At the instant of impact, the 3 Genesis Qi beasts were immediately forced back, causing them to fall along with the momentum of the comets, as they held angrily. It was clear that Lu Feng's star scripture was stronger. When he saw this, the corners of his mouth slowly began to raise. Zhu Yuan, have you finally reached your limits? If so, first place will be mine. Lu Feng's hands suddenly pressed downwards, causing Berserk Genesis Qi to spew out from the green comets again, as if intending to smash the 3 Genesis Qi beasts to smithereens. The 3 beasts continued to howl, but were still slowly pushed down little by little. While regretful sighs filled the sky, Zhu Yuan's expression remained calm from start to end. He gazed at the slowly descending green comets, sensing that their power had already reached the limit. Is that all? Then it's my turn, muttered Zhu Yuan to himself. A split later, he suddenly produced a long, drawn-out whistle. The whistle was akin to a clap of thunder. At this very moment, the 3 suppressed Genesis Qi beasts released thunderous roars in response. As they roared, the savage auras pulsing from their bodies began to steadily rise all of a sudden. The originally 100 feet tall Genesis Qi pillars abruptly began to grow, reaching a height of 300 feet. What? This sudden turn of events made Lu Feng's pupils shrink. How can this be? He clearly only refined high-tier grade 4 Genesis Beast Essence blood. How can it possibly be so powerful? He had studied the 9 Dragons canon before. It was said that only by refining grade 5 Essence blood would the Genesis Qi Beast pillars reach a height of 300 feet. He clearly remembered that there was no other grade 5 Genesis Beast Essence blood in the Glittering Jewels Pavilion. Zhu Yuan's expression remained indifferent. He had indeed only managed to obtain the grade 4 Essence blood. However, he had used Tuntun's blood to upgrade the grade 4 Essence blood, making them not the least bit inferior to real grade 5 Essence blood. Roar! Astonishing power exploded from the 300 feet tall beasts. They waved their long tails, wrapping them around the 3 green comets as a ferocious aura erupted. The 3 green comets were instantly shattered, turning into specks of light that filled the sky. An uproar filled the sky. No one had expected yet another twist. The advantage Lu Feng originally had was now completely gone. Roar! After shattering the 3 green comets, the 3 beasts shrank substantially, though they still contained alarming power. In a flash, they appeared above Lu Feng. The 3 beasts roared as they pounced, their frightening power engulfing Lu Feng. Horror surfaced on Lu Feng's face, as he hurriedly circulated his Genesis Chi, to create a 100-foot-tall green wall of Chi in front of him. Boom! Berserk shockwaves swept outwards from the collision. Everyone watched as Lu Feng's green Chi wall was blasted apart. His body was caught in the aftershocks, falling from the sky like a cannonball. With a loud boom, he smashed into the golden stone platform. Cracks emerged on the stone platform, while dust filled the air. In the sky above, the 3 beasts had used up all of their energy and began to gradually fade away. Zhu Yuan spat out a breath of air, his face expressionless, as he gazed at the spot Lu Feng had landed. The world around them fell silent for an instant. The fights that were still ongoing elsewhere also paused for a moment as shocked gaze after gaze looked towards the top stone platform. Compared to the battle there, the rest of them really looked like little kids. When they saw Lu Feng being struck down from the air, all of them could not help but swallow again and again, terror now filling their gazes when they looked towards Zhu Yuan. No one had expected Zhu Yuan's battle power to be so overwhelming. Jiyu Hongyi's eyes were also tinged with a little surprise, as she looked towards the figure left standing on the golden stone platform. The strength displayed by the latter had similarly surpassed her expectations. Jiyu Hongyi looked towards Yang Xiu with an icy grin. "What do you think?" Yang Xiu's expression had turned exceptionally grave. He sighed softly and answered, "He is indeed formidable. I am not as good as him." He knew that if he was the one in Lu Feng's place, his defeat would be even more thorough. However, he paused for a brief moment as a complicated expression rose in his eyes. However, Lu Feng will do anything to achieve victory. Hongyi, Zhu Yuan cannot win this match. Jiyu Hongyi's pupils shivered upon hearing this. Just as she was about to reply, she suddenly sensed something and lifted her head to look at the golden stone platform. The dust was gradually dissipating as a figure slowly walked out. This figure naturally belonged to Lu Feng. However, his current appearance was exceedingly pathetic. His clothes were tattered and there was even blood at the corner of his lip, a clear sign that he had been injured by Zhu Yuan's earlier 9 dragons cannon. But although his appearance was miserable, a heart-palpitating fire burned within his eyes. He stared at Zhu Yuan as a twisted, sinister smile appeared from the corners of his lips. "I truly never imagined that a day would come where I would be pushed to such a miserable state. However, it will not be so easy for you to use me as a stepping stone." As Lu Feng's eerie voice faded, his body gradually turned scarlet red, as if the blood inside was burning. At the same time, everyone felt alarming Genesis Chi undulations frantically erupt from his body like a volcano, gradually growing stronger and stronger. After a short span of a few breaths, Lu Feng's Genesis Chi had broken past the limits of the 4th layer Alpha Origin, stepping into the realm of the 5th layer. Deafening cries washed over the sky. No one had expected the battle between Zhu Yuan and Lu Feng to become so intense. Lu Feng had clearly already lost his mind to rage, and intended to crush Zhu Yuan at any cost. If Zhu Yuan did not have any more trump cards, he would not be able to continue competing with Lu Feng. If that happened, first place would undoubtedly fall into Lu Feng's hands. Lu Feng felt to rapidly rising Genesis Chi in his body, his eyes scarlet red, as he sent a dark stare at Zhu Yuan and pointed down at an angle. A chilling voice followed. "Zhu Yuan, if you still have a little tact, get off the stage yourself. Don't force my hand, or it will be life or death." Vigorous and ferocious Genesis Chi swept out from Lu Feng's body like massive plumes of smoke as a domineering pressure engulfed the entire golden stone platform. On the Genesis Chi clouds above, Snow Lotus Peak Master Liu Lianyi's eyebrows knitted together when she saw this. To think that he has even used a blood-burning secret art. Lu Feng seems to be really unwilling to let go. A blood-burning secret art was technique that could temporarily raise one's strength through burning one's essence blood. However, the repercussions were extremely serious. The fact that Lu Feng had used it was a clear indication that he was willing to do anything at this point. Sect Master Qingyang, the White-Brow Elder, and Jiyu Hongtian also frowned a little. Although there were no restrictions in the peak selection ceremony, it was after all a competition between disciples, and Lu Feng's actions were indeed rather unsightly. They are youngsters after all who are prideful and eager for victory. It's difficult to avoid letting the heat get to their heads. Peak Master Ling Jun chuckled. He seemed to be reproaching Lu Feng while also playing down his actions, turning Lu Feng's unscrupulousness into being overly eager for victory. Peak Master Liu Lianyi's red lips curled slightly, a trace of mockery flowing out in her eyes, evidently finding Peak Master Ling Jun's explanation laughable. However, she did not argue, but merely regretfully glanced at Zhu Yuan. This little one was truly remarkable to have fought with Lu Feng to this extent, with just the strength of a first-layer Alpha origin. Unfortunately, he lacked a little luck. Peak Master Ling Jun's gaze looked towards Lu Feng as the smile on his face slightly receded, before sweeping a glance at Lu Xianyin, a faint sliver of anger in his eyes. Lu Xuanin's pretty face paled slightly. She understood that Peak Master Ling Jun was already disappointed in Lu Feng's performance. After all, now that he was forced to use a blood-burning secret art by a first-layer Alpha origin disciple, it would not look good even if he won. Her hands clenched tightly, not daring to say anything to Peak Master Ling Jun. When she looked towards Zhu Yuan, her gaze was filled with hatred. Filthy peasant. She cursed in her heart. Lu Feng should have been able to beautifully take first place. It would have made him highly valued by Peak Master Ling Jun when he entered the Sword Cometh Peak, allowing him to become an important candidate for grooming, and eventually turn into one of the core members of the Tsangshuan sect. But who could have foreseen that this beautiful future would be ruined by that dirty peasant? Even if Lu Feng won now, his victory would already be sullied. Lu Feng, you must cripple that peasant. Make him pay the price. Under the countless shocked gazes that could fill the sky, Lu Feng sinisterly stared at Zhu Yuan. How could he not be aware that using this secret art would be a blemish even if he won? However, he had no choice. He could not let Zhu Yuan take first place away from him, or he would not know where to hide his face. Therefore, even if he had to smear his reputation a little, he needed to succeed today. In response to his sinister gaze, Zhu Yuan frowned slightly. Soon after, he said in an indifferent voice, "If you want first place, come and fight for it. Don't bother with such childish threats." Lu Feng's laughed in anger. "Excellent. Since you wish to die, I will grant your wish." Genesis Chi exploded from his body without reservation, the Genesis Chi pressured directly making Zhu Yuan's body feel akin to lead. If Lu Feng was still at the fourth layer Alpha origin, Zhu Yuan would have been able to close the gap between them through various means. But now that the former was at the fifth layer, the disparity between them was far too great. Lu Feng's figure slowly rose into the sky as if riding the violent winds. Genesis Chi spread behind him, turning into a green starry sky. Star scripture, green comet. Genesis Chi frantically converged, ultimately transforming into an enormous green comet. As it slowly rose, extremely astonishing Genesis Chi undulations pulsed from it. This green comet was basically the entirety of Lu Feng's Genesis Chi. He clearly no longer had any patience left, and intended to end the fight with a single attack. In the face of this gargantuan green comet, the expressions of numerous disciples changed, and even Yang Xiu, Jiyu Hongyi and the rest could not help but tremble. No one under the sixth layer Alpha origin could block an attack of such proportions. As the green comet steadily rose higher and higher, Zhu Yuan naturally felt a suffocating pressure, causing his expression to grow increasingly grim. He knew that he would not be able to withstand this attack with his first layer Alpha origin strength. Since that was so, Zhu Yuan's eyes slowly closed at this moment, causing many gazes to look over in bewilderment. While they were trying to figure out why, someone suddenly sensed the Genesis Chi around Zhu Yuan's body begin to ripple. The rippling started out weak, but after a dozen breaths, it became akin to boiling water, shuddering volatilely. This video will end here.